the week and
No,
everything?
no,
Okay.
no. This is just all you.
Like, yeah, we're just gonna do your this is all your interview, and then we like the week of like when this gets released, we'll do our God of the Week and stuff. So like,
okay.
So I'm just gonna intro you, and then we'll just start talking.
Okay.
So, all right.
Tonight and I hit the button. Hold on,
dude.
It takes a second, and then like even like the Facebook is like it's loading, but then I listened to it last night, and it was like it started like 10 seconds before it actually went. But we are live on Facebook now.
Okay, so are you cool with me going and starting?
I mean, I'm not your dad.
That is true. So I'm gonna get started. All right.
But you can call me. Don't do that.
Oh boy.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I didn't know it was that kind of show.
For sure.
It's weird, dude.
Different show. Different podcast. My bad.
Welcome, Yasmine. Really, because Jesus Christ, Dan. All right. Tonight we are honored to. Well, dude. False start over and over and over. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna get serious and really be really professional here. So, I'm gonna talk, and then Dan, you're gonna shh for a minute. Okay, thanks.
Like a good man does.
Yeah. All right. So tonight on our podcast, we are honored to welcome Yasmine Mohammed, and Yasmine is an Arab Canadian University educator, activist, and author who has a blog called Confessions of an ExMuslim, and who has recently written a memoir entitled From Al-Qaeda to Atheism. Thank you, Yasmine, for joining us and being so willing to share your story with us and our audience.
Thank you for inviting me, Natalie and Dan. I'm really glad to be here.
And let's give a thank you to our mutual friend Faisal for like helping arrange this. He's been friend of our podcast and us. So like Faisal, thank you so much for connecting us with Yasmine.
Faisal al-Baghdadi. I'll swag daddy.
Ooh, that's good. That is so him. So, I mean, like, I know you're going to have so much to tell us tonight because you have.
Yeah, it's one in here.
I mean, like, it's like, where do we even begin? So, like, can we just start at the beginning? I mean, I'm just fascinated in knowing what was it like from childhood, growing up in a conservative Muslim family in North America. And that's like another thing I want to point out is that this is all, your story takes place in North America. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, that was just one of the first things obviously that struck me is that this is, you know,
mm-hmm. Right. So even though I'm here in North America, it was pretty insular. So it could have been anywhere in the world. Actually, I've read some stories by people that were part of the Westboro Baptist Church or, you know, Orthodox Jews or even Mormons sometimes that they like we speak the same language, like we're completing each other's sentences because it's sort of the same thing. Even though you're in the middle of society, you're sort of off in a bubble, separated all by yourself. So yeah, that's what it was like. Even though I was here, I was kind of not here. It wasn't until I left Islam that I kind of joined society and was not seeing everybody around me as my enemy, but just starting to just appreciate and recognize like the country that I was in. I mean, I read a book by Shazia Hobbs called The Ghori's Daughter, and Ghori just means like white woman in Urdu. So her dad is Pakistani and her mom is Scottish, and she grew up like same thing in this like Pakistani like area of Glasgow. And when she ran away from her family, she legitimately did not know how to survive outside of her community. Like she didn't know anything about the outside world. So it's pretty crazy, but unfortunately it's pretty common.
And so like your community, your religious community and family, that was your community that you were in.
Yeah, my mom was.
So like, was there much exposure to anybody outside or even like with school or any, like what was your schooling?
So a lot of my schooling was in Islamic schools, which is part of the, you know, it's part of the indoctrination part of like, it's a way to keep the kids separated from the rest of society. It's hard to convince kids that the non-Muslims are out to get you and they're evil and we're at war with them and all that stuff if you're interacting with these kids and you're friends with these kids. So having a Muslim school serves to separate them from non-Muslim kids, and then that way when they start to tell them, you know, non-Muslims are this, that, and the other thing, it's easier for them to believe. I mean, that's why when you go to Egypt or other Muslim majority countries, people have like these ridiculous notions about Jews. Like they think that they're like these super beings, like almost like alien beings with all of these like amazing powers, because there are no Jewish people there. So they can just keep on perpetuating these myths about like, oh, you know, they're going to put cancer in the vegetables because they're trying to kill us all. Oh yeah. Like all sorts of crazy stuff.
That's real stuff.
That's real. That was actually that was something my aunt actually said to me. She said, the cucumbers are so much smaller in the market these days than they used to be. Like, oh, it says that they're coming from Lebanon, but I bet you it's the Jews. They came across the border and they put cancer into the vegetables and now they're trying to feed them to us. This is like, it's funny now, but yeah. And I mean, speak to, like, I'm sure if you asked Faisal the same question, he'd have had like a lot of crazy stories to tell you too about the kinds of things that his family members believed and just the society at large. I was talking to this guy, Hashim, recently, who grew up in Iraq, and he was saying that up until he was like 10 years old, he thought Jewish people were aliens from outer space. He didn't realize that they were actually human beings. So yeah, this us versus them thing is quite strong, and the Muslim schools serve to perpetuate that us versus them dichotomy, I guess. Yeah.
We could talk for like the next 2 to 3 hours about religious schools, but
yeah. Yeah,
that's a topic of another show. But tell us about like just how this all happens, where you end up being forced into this marriage.
All right. So okay, I'm gonna have to go back a little bit. So my parents actually got divorced when I was just like about 2 years old, and my mom had 3 kids. She was pretty like, you know, she came from a Muslim family, but she wasn't really Muslim. Like she didn't practice, she didn't pray, she didn't wear hijab. It was just sort of just like a cultural thing. But now she found herself with 3 kids, you know, and this is again a common story. She's just looking for something to hold on to, looking for something to grasp. And so she found religion. And in the mosque, she met some man that was already married, but said, I'll also marry you and take care of your children for you. So she became his second wife. And that's when it all began. That was when the hardcore Salafi, like just life is all about prayer and devotion to God. And you're going to, you know, you fulfill your destiny of dying in the name of Allah, and then in heaven you get all the good stuff. Like, don't worry about earth, it's irrelevant. Your aim is to just die in his name. And that was it. That was just like one single focus for all those years. And knowing, like, I knew that when I graduated from high school, they were gonna marry me off. I'm surprised, actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they'd have married me off before I finished high school. But I was pretty sure they weren't going to let me go to college or, you know, get a job or anything. Like there's no way I was going to join society as an individual. I was going to be somebody's wife, somebody else's possession. So I tried to fight it for a while, which is why I lasted all the way till I was 19. Because I was fighting it, but eventually I just gave in. I was like, you know what? I want my mom to love me. I want her to be proud of me. Let's see, I'll try it her way, and let's see if my life ends up becoming just easier, because it was just constant struggle and fighting. And And I was so unhappy and so full of self-hate, and I had no other options. I just didn't want to marry this guy. I just didn't like him. There was something about him. I mean, I didn't like any of the guys she brought forward, but especially this one. Like, he was just, there's something sinister about him. I was very uncomfortable around him. And I was speaking to Faisal at one point too, and we were both, because we both know people that are from Al Qaeda, and I said something like, "There's just you can sense them," and he's like, "Yep, you can sense them." And I remember Majid Nawaz saying the same thing. He's like, "Sorry guys, I have something in my throat." Majid was saying, like, you can smell them. He's like, there's something about them. Like, there's something different about these guys. They're off.
Do they smell like they live in caves?
Yeah, they smell like camel urine, maybe. That's a thing, by the way.
I don't know what that smells like.
That's drinking camel urine actually cures all diseases, I'll have you know. So,
okay.
Yeah, Prophet Muhammad said so. So,
all right. Well,
if you don't agree with me, you're just an Islamophobe.
Yeah, exactly. I heard Islam was very progressive, and especially when it comes to like female genitalia, how birth works, and things like that.
Yeah, totally. And you can even get camel urine in juice boxes now. That's how progressive it is.
Wow.
So anyway,
you're dropping a lot of new knowledge out of it. Wow. Yeah.
I want to talk about pee. That's what I came here for.
Now, how did we get on this topic? It always ends up into potty talk.
You brought it up.
Right.
You're the one that brought it up.
I guess I get the blame.
Camel urine juice boxes. That has to be the sponsor of this episode. So
brought to
send
you
some
by
to Dan. Yeah.
So where even was I? I don't even know.
So
I don't know. We were talking about camel urine, and then I got distracted.
He gets distracted by that. So you could sense the.
Oh right, yeah. I could smell the camel urine. Right. Yeah. So I didn't like him. I didn't want to marry him, but of course I didn't have a choice. So, ended up marrying him. You know, was put in niqab, and that's the face covering, not even my eyes, gloves and black socks and all these things delivered from Saudi Arabia because nothing was quite opaque enough in Canada. And I pretty much just stayed in the house for those 4 years anyway. It's not like I left the house, but even the wall, like the windows, he would cover them in paper just in case you could see through the curtain, in case the curtain moved, like there was a wind or something. So he also had like meat packing paper taped all around the windows. And I just lived like that. And I ended up having a baby, and I was unhappy, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't think I had any other options. I had no idea. But then when my daughter was born, that's when I figured, like, I just looked at this little girl that I loved her so much, and I was just going to do anything to protect her. You know the feeling, Natalie. Yeah. And then, so I was like,
I don't know.
Do you
have
my
kids?
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do.
You just look like such a young buck. All right, so you both know what I mean. Like you look at your child and you're like, I will do anything that it takes to protect this baby. And so that's what I did. I had a high school education, and I didn't know anything about it. I mean, these are the days before the internet, right? So it's not like I could Google or figure out anything. No cell phone, nothing. But I had to get my daughter out of that world. And so I did.
And so what was that sort of escape like for you? I mean,
it was a two-tiered escape. First, I had to get away from him. And to get away from him, I went to stay with my mom. And then I had to get away from my mom after that. So it actually took a long time. There's all sorts of things I'm skipping over here, but one of the things that happened too, so there was at one point my mom ended up having a really bad nosebleed, and it was also coming out, like she was coughing up blood. So I called 911 and the ambulance came and took us to the hospital. And that was the very first time in all those years that I was actually out of the house without him. Like he was always right there with me. This was the first time that I was out in the world without him by my side. And CSIS, who are the Canadian CIA, came and found me in the waiting room of the hospital, like instantly. And they told me about who he was and connected to bin Laden and everything. And I didn't know any of these characters. I had no idea what Al-Qaeda was. This is pre 9/11. He was there for 9/11. That was his purpose. So I didn't know any of these things, but it scared me and it gave me more reason to want to get out. But I didn't actually get out right away, but I was able to separate him and my mom, because him and my mom together had like a really, really strong bond. And I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to fight them both. So I sort of did the divide and conquer thing, which was pretty easy because I basically just told my mom all of the things that he was saying. And one of the things that he was saying was that he wanted her to move out. He was tired of having her in the house with us. So I told my mom that he said this, and then she got so enraged and she moved out that day. So then I only had to deal with him. And then it was a little bit easier. And so I sort of got complacent. It was easier because he was never home. He always went out all the time with his friends because he was there for a purpose, right? He's there for a reason. He didn't have a job, but he was always out with his friends for days at a time. So it was just me and my daughter. And I got complacent. And then that's when I found out that I was pregnant again. And that's when I really got scared, because then I was like, I could survive with one baby, but now like a second baby, like how could I have not left when I had the chance to leave? And so I just sort of at that point kind of accepted my fate. I was like, okay, well, this is it then. I'm just going to accept the role of the Al-Qaeda wife and just, this is my life, because I'm not going to be able to survive with two kids. And then I found out that the baby didn't have a heartbeat. And so then I was consumed with guilt because now I felt like I was the one that killed my baby because I was actually not wanting it to be born. But at the same time, I was also feeling like I better get the fuck out of here as quickly as possible before I lose my chance again. So when I went for the D&C afterwards, because I had a general anesthetic, so the doctor said, you know, you're going to need a couple days where somebody helps with your daughter because she was just a baby at the time, because you're going to be like groggy or whatever. So I was like, great. Can I go stay with my mom? Because obviously he's not going to help me with the baby. So he's like, yeah, whatever. Go stay with your mom for a couple days. And he left me there for a week. And so within that week, I got my shit together. I got in the yellow pages, looked up a lawyer, and my mom went to work because my mom didn't know what was going on either. My mom went to work. She was the head of the Islamic Studies department at the Islamic school. She went to work. I took my daughter in my niqab still and, you know, got on the bus, found my way to the lawyer. And I was like, I need full custody, a restraining order, and a divorce, like ASAP. And you can't call me at the house. You know, like we have to do everything now. And she was wonderful. And I didn't even realize at the time how wonderful she was because I was in such shock and panic. But she was basically like, I got this. Don't worry. It's fine. And I was so nervous because I had to give her his address because he had to get served. And I just didn't know if everything was happening because there was no way for me to contact her. So I just sort of like left it in her hands and then just hoped that it was actually going to happen. And then it did happen because he came to my mom's building screaming and shouting and swearing and yelling, "Give me back my wife." So I was like, okay, so he must have been served.
There's a sign
going about it.
Yeah. So that's how I knew. And then I never saw him again after that. Like he just was, because now he had restraining orders to the cop, because people in the building called the cops and and then the cops informed him, like, this is what the restraining order means, that you can't come to this building anymore. And so I was scared to leave the building anyway, because they told me, like, we can keep him from coming where you are, but if he doesn't know where you are and you both happen to be in the same mall or something, like, that's different. So I had to be like, he's just not allowed to come to where I live. So I didn't leave the house because I was too scared that he'd be lurking around some corner. But then eventually CSIS contacted me again, and they showed me a picture of him behind bars in Egypt. And they're like, is this him? And I was like, yes, it's him. And so that's after that, I applied for student loans and I started to go to college. And then it was about getting out of my mom's house now, because obviously no decent girl lives by herself. I mean, once you've been married, the rules are a little bit more lax because you're not a virgin anymore. So you're already used goods. So it's not as big of a psychotic hold on the girls, but still it's an embarrassment to your family if you're going to live on your own. So she wouldn't let me go live on my own with my daughter. And I didn't want to live with her anymore. I had issues with my brother, and I just wanted to start my life anew. And she wouldn't let me. So when she went to Florida to visit my sister, I packed our bags, and one of my friends who I'd met in university helped me to get a place, and we just ran out of the house. And then, so that's how I got away from my mom. And then so years pass. I finished university. Actually, when I was in university, that's when I took a course on the history of religions. And that's when I realized that everything I'd believed was bullshit. Like, I was literally like Neo from the Matrix. Like, what, like, everything was wrong. Everything was a lie. And so I wasn't ready to just drop Islam really quickly because it was too much a part of who I was. But I was really, really excited about the prospect. Like, I was happy to find out that I didn't have to harbor all this hate that was being pushed on me. I was happy that I didn't have to have all this inner turmoil constantly, that I could just be myself. So the first thing that I did once I finished university, and by now 9/11 had happened and everybody was sort of very aware of women wearing hijab and stuff like that. So I didn't want to take off my hijab in school, even though I wanted to take it off, but because I didn't want to bring so much attention to myself. And I was afraid that people were going to all come to me and be like, oh, did you take it off because of 9/11 and you want nothing to do with those Muslims anymore? And I kind of didn't want to be an Islamophobe.
You didn't want to be one of those people. Right?
Yeah. So
not that you had like any reason to have a rational fear of anything, like, because we'll just ignore that part.
Yeah. No, I totally did, but I still had an emotional connection. And so I wasn't ready yet. But as soon as I graduated from university, I took it off. That was the first thing I did. And at this point, I was calling myself not religious. But I still thought that maybe there was a God, but I wasn't quite agnostic yet. I was still sort of Muslim, but not practicing. Like, it's this process,
diet
right?
Muslim.
Yes, exactly. Muslim light. So my mom had just seen that I took off my hijab. She didn't even know anything about what was happening in my head. I hadn't spoken to her about anything. She just saw that I took off my hijab, and she threatened to kill me. And she said, this is, you're if you leave Islam, then you're to be killed. And I'm just going to be doing my duty as a Muslim because I'm not going to ruin my chances of not going to heaven by not having you murdered. So, that was basically like my cue that I had to stay away from her, because I didn't, people say like, my dad's going to kill me. But it's different when Muslims say it. Like,
because that's like a real thing. That's
a real thing. Like, honor killings are an actual thing. This isn't like a, dramatic hyperbole. So I definitely believed her without a doubt. And so I haven't seen her in like almost 15 years now, or spoken to her or had any contact with her.
Wow. I'm pretty sure that was a question that somebody had asked, like when we asked for, you know, questions on our pages, like if you ever felt that, because I mean, that's a real fear.
Oh yeah.
To have that, you know, you've done something to warrant that. I mean, that, like, that's like, I can't imagine that feeling. I mean, and that's the thing, honestly. I was reading, you know, one of your other interviews, and just, I mean, the way you described so much of being in the relationship, in this world, just how at one point I think you said you felt like you were just suffocating and it was just all around you all the time. And it just, there was something so powerful about that, but then also the fact that you've made this escape from it, you know, and like, what did it feel like to be out?
It's not that easy. It's like, it's brainwashing, right? So it like ensnares your brain in a way, like the way you eat, the way you drink, the way you go to the bathroom, the way you put on shoes, you know, the way you have sex, like every single aspect of your life is completely regulated. And so to go from having that constant instructions, I guess, like you never think. There's never an opportunity to think. Everything is always laid out for you. And then of course you're praying 5 times a day too. So there's really it's not like you have any downtime. Like it's this constant filling your head up with that all the time. I can't remember who it was. I heard it on a podcast recently. Somebody was saying that somebody was asking a question on one of those, you know, Islamic chat things, like, is it okay if I play Clash of Titans or whatever? Like, these are legit questions, because people are like, every single aspect of your life is regulated. I remember telling somebody that you weren't allowed to pluck your eyebrows, and they were like, what? Like, that is so weird. I'm like, yeah, how you cut your toenails is laid out for you, like everything. So when you leave that, and all of a sudden the whole world is just like, you have to make decisions all of a sudden. I've never made a decision in my life. I've never had choices. So it was really, that was probably the hardest part for me, especially since I had to get my own apartment, and I had to somehow get my way to school and get my own groceries and like live my own life all of a sudden by myself with no support, with having zero tools, like zero ability for like decision-making skills. So that was the toughest part. Yeah.
So there are other people that are in situations like this, right? Mm-hmm. Where they are just in these kind of relationships, and I mean, religion in general, right? And probably questioning and wondering what to do, if there's mm-hmm. a way out, or how to get out. I mean, what advice do you have for people to like break out of these kind of situations?
The great thing about these days, and I say jokingly, but also not jokingly, I could have saved so much money on therapy had there been social media back in those days. Like the fact that you can just reach out and find other people that are questioning, watch a YouTube video that answers those questions that you're asking. Just, you have access to all the information. I mean, a lot of Muslims too grew up thinking, just because they had good families, and their families would be like, no, like, Islam is all about love and it means peace. It actually means submission. It doesn't mean peace. But anyway, like people, they like make these pretty stories for their kids, and then their kids are seeing ISIS and they're like, wait a minute, how is that basically a manifestation? Like, that's what Prophet Muhammad did. They're just following in his footsteps. And so it's making these people doubt and question, and so then they can go online and read the Quran for themselves. Like, they don't have to listen to their imam in the mosque or to their teacher in the Muslim school or to their parents. Like, go to the source, read the Quran, see what it says, read the Hadith, see what it says, know the truth. And I think that nobody can stop you from doing that anymore. Maryam Namazi was saying that the internet is doing to Islam what the printing press did to Christianity. And I thought, like, yes, that's exactly it. Like, you can't, that's why they kill us, right? That's why they kill ex-Muslims. They kill apostates because they don't want us telling their secrets on podcasts, for example. You know, like, this is why, okay, kill them before they can spread the truth about us. Like, we'll keep our secrets to ourselves. Scientology has it the opposite. Like, if you tell people the truth, then the person that you've told will end up dying. But, you know, all these crazy cults have their own little rules. But basically, the premise is don't tell the truth about what's happening in our inner circle. And they can't do that anymore. They have no control over that anymore because now, you know, Google knows everything. So, sucks.
I've gotten multiple messages to my page from people who, like, specifically just off from what I remember, people in Pakistan who, like, YouTube access to just a lot of things are just completely blocked, and they're
Yes.
asking me, how do I get more information about these things? How do I read more? And it's like, I don't know what to tell them because I want to help, but also, like, I don't want to be like, hey, order a bunch of books and then then now you got a big target on your back because now, well, why do you have this book? This is not. So, like, what would you, I guess, what kind of advice, or, I mean, what do I say to those people who have that question, and, like, I want to help, but, like, also don't want to like legitimately put them at risk?
I would say help as much as you can. You're right. A lot of websites are blocked. They do monitor Twitter, for example, waiting, like, especially like in Saudi Arabia, they're trying to catch gay people or catch atheists.
We can't talk bad about Saudi Arabia. They're our ally. We can't talk bad about them.
Yeah.
Topic of another show.
That is definitely another show. Yeah.
At all.
So yeah, they try and restrict people as much as possible. But, you know, if people want to know the truth, they're gonna get to the truth. Like, you're not going to be able to stop them. This again, to quote Maryam Namazi, this is a tsunami and it's out of their control at this point. The word is out. Muslims and ex-Muslims are talking to each other. They know who Carl Sagan is. They know the earth isn't flat. They know that the sun doesn't set in between two mud puddles or whatever, and that we're not on a whale's back and all this bullshit. They know that that's not true anymore. So the cat's out of the bag kind of at this point. And I would say help people as much as you possibly can by offering them whatever you can. Like, I know Armin Navabi, he has a PDF of his book, which is called Why There Is No God. And the reason why he kept the rights to his book is so that he could send PDFs to people in Iran and in all these countries where they'll never be able to actually purchase his book. So, you know, they're so limited with access to information that if we can get it to them, let's get it to them. And, you know, they know they're taking a risk. We're all taking a risk. I'm taking a risk right now. You're taking a risk right now. Like, we have to, the more of us that speak out, the less control they have. I mean, when it was only Salman Rushdie and it was only the satanic verses, then they could put a fatwa on his head and everybody else was quiet. But then, you know, it grew. And, you know, when it was only Ayaan Hirsi Ali, same thing. She had to deal with death threats. She has to have guards, like bodyguards with her. But now there are so many of us. And the more of us that speak up, the stronger we are.
Well, and that, yeah, like that was another question too, like from somebody on the page, like, what can the atheist community do to help? And I mean, is that what it is just speaking and being united and just giving as much of a platform to people to tell their stories, right? And
yeah, and put the spark of of critical thought, like just help them, because a lot of these, if it's a Muslim school, by definitely critical thought is not just discouraged, it is punished. Like we were not allowed to ask questions. If you doubt or if you start to try to make sense of something, then that's the devil whispering in your ear, and you have to try and shut the devil out. So we would actively shut down our minds, because that's how you get to heaven, right? You don't want to burn in hell. So just helping these people to sort of see the light for themselves. I'm not saying tell them what to think. I'm just saying like help them to think, like how to think, you know, question it, try to see, because none of it makes sense. I mean, it falls like a house of cards in seconds, you know, it doesn't take long. Religion is ridiculous. And they can see it when it's other religions. Like they'll be like, oh, ha, 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 Scientology is so funny. It's like, well, did you notice how ridiculous yours is? Like the guy built a boat and put all the insects in it. And like, you know what I mean? Like it's just.
And here we are. Yeah. It all.
Yeah. Like, so they don't see it when it's their own. And, you know, Muslims don't recognize how ridiculous their religion is until they just start to question a little bit. And then it's just like a thread just unravels. It's pretty quick.
I think that's pretty consistent for any religion, though. Is none of it makes sense, and once, like you said, like once you can question something in a book that is supposed to be perfect, then that leads you to question the next ridiculous thing, and then the next, and then all of a sudden none of it makes sense. But we have this book that's supposed to be perfect, but none of it adds up.
Mm-hmm. No, and then you actually go and read the religious text, and you're like, "What the fuck is this? Like, what am I reading? This makes no fucking sense." So let's rethink.
That's like the Quran is like I've read the Bible. I've read most of the Quran, like in bits and pieces all over. It is just awful. This is the most boring thing ever, because he tells the same goddamn story like 15,000 times throughout the entire book.
Yeah. He needed an editor.
They all did.
It's almost like there weren't a lot of people that were literate that wrote books back then that could write it down. So it was the stories that were passed around.
Yeah, it's just a mishmash of a bunch of stories that he took from here and there. And yeah, people like to say like, oh, it's so beautiful, it's so poetic, it's so wonderfully written. I'm like, what is this trope that you're repeating? Like, have you read it? It's garbage. It's really
which Sarah are you talking about that's poetic?
Right.
Like,
there's nothing poetic about it. I mean, it's just really, really badly written, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's full of contradictions, and it's just, there's nothing. And even the English, this is the thing, like when you read it in Arabic, it's actually even worse, because the translators in English are like trying their hardest to make sense of it and to make it like as coherent as possible. And they also choose the most generous like adjectives to translate the words that are in the Quran. So if in the Quran it's a word that's like beat your wife, they'll change it to strike her or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like lightly they'll put in brackets. So they try as hard as they can to
like don't leave a mark, but if you do, it's okay. Just make it so it's not, it's like basically don't make her bleed.
Yes,
like that's all we're looking for.
Like, tone it down. The milder version.
Tone it down.
Yep.
Like we're okay with domestic violence.
Just tone it down a bit.
Less.
A little.
Yeah. So when you read it in Arabic, there's no toning down. It's straight up, right? And it's pretty brutal.
And so, like, okay, so just bringing up that kind of topic of like, you know, violence towards women and that kind of thing. Like, how does this religion fit into our modern society and wanting, you know, that I would say most of us want women to be viewed as, you know, humans.
Yeah.
Like how does, about.
Well, I think the short answer is it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's my short answer. There are Muslim reformers out there that I have a lot of respect for, like Majid Nawaz or Asr Nomani, that really want to try and put this square peg into a round hole. And so they're trying their best.
And on that, like Majid, he's a well-known anti-Islam extremist, though.
Totally.
I'm on here because the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Oh yeah. Right. Like their greatest ally on the left, and that's the person that they choose to make an enemy out of. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ayaan Hirsi Ali, same thing. She's
yeah.
also a reformer now. And these are they're sort of the mindset that like, so it's like, you know how Christianity had the Old Testament and then it had like the kinder, gentler New Testament. They're trying to sort of do the same thing with Islam. But that's them, right? To each their own, however they want to go about their life and whatever it is that they want to do. I support them. That's fantastic because at least it's a step in the right direction. But personally, I think that I value truth and I value honesty, and I think that there's just I don't like the wishy-washy gray area in between, to be honest.
You take a pile of shit and put whatever you want on it, it's still a pile of shit.
100%. Totally agree. You spray it with as much, rose
There's not enough
scented
Febreze in the world to make this any better.
Yes, completely agree. Yeah. Just clean up the shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So your short answer is what I expected for the short answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. There's no place. They're at odds completely with each other. Yeah.
Now, and we then, still on the subject of women, we had several people ask about, the traditional dress and the burqa and hijab and everything. Like, what's your thought about?
So
we can only live stream for 4 hours. We're already 40 minutes in, so we can only talk about this for 3 hours and 20 minutes. Talk fast.
All right. First of all, I want to say that it's actually not traditional dress. So every one of these countries that had their cultures annihilated and replaced with Islam has an actual culture. So like, look at ISIS now, what they're doing in Syria. They're breaking down all the statues. They did the same thing with the Buddhist statues in Afghanistan. Like, this is their thing, right? Get rid of the culture of the place and then replace their culture with Islam. So now people say things like Islamic culture, Islamic dress. Islam doesn't have a culture. It doesn't have a food. It doesn't have a language. It doesn't have music. It doesn't have art. There's no fucking culture there. It's a religion.
Oh, there's violence.
There's violence. Sure. It's a violent religion. But to say like that somebody is, a cultural Muslim is like, no, there is a culture there. What are you? Are you Pakistani? Are you Egyptian? Are you Indonesian? Every single one of these countries has a different separate culture, and Islam tried its hardest, and in some ways really did succeed. The fact that we're having this conversation is a testament to its success of annihilating the culture that existed beforehand and replacing it with just Islam. So when people like to celebrate the hijab, they're celebrating a far right Islamic, I don't even want to say symbol because it's more than just a symbol. It's like a tool. That's what they're not celebrating different cultures. They're not celebrating multiculturalism and different people. They're treating Muslims like a monolith and like all the same, which is exactly what Muhammad wanted. And not only are they treating all Muslims exactly the same, but they're valuing the most right-wing Muslims, which is also exactly what Muhammad wanted. So it's exactly the Islamist agenda is totally fucking working when you have when you have women in hijab on catwalks and on, Hillary Clinton sending out a tweet celebrating this Olympian because she was wearing a hijab. I mean, she didn't celebrate the other Muslim women or the other women of different ethnicities that were all in the Olympics. This was just a random, she didn't even win any medals.
Almost like she was pandering.
totally pandering, but she's pandering to the right wing. Like, can you imagine Hillary pandering to a right-wing Christian and being all excited about somebody wearing Mormon underwear?
Never.
Like, that would never happen.
No.
So why are you excited about a right-wing Muslim? It makes no sense. Like, they treat Muslims as if they're like this separate entity. They don't realize that they're just human beings like the rest of us. And the same logic that you use when you talk about any other religions is the same. They think just because Muslims have brown skin and they're minorities in America or they're minorities in Canada, all of a sudden they get treated with these kid gloves and they get treated differently. Well, no, that's fucking rude. They're still people just like everybody else, regardless of the color of their skin. That's legit racism right there. Like, how is that a liberal value? So yeah, you guys knew it was going to drive me crazy. Like, but this is a big topic, right?
It is because that, like, the way it was phrased in one of the questions too was just to ask you about like sort of this glorification of of this type of dress. And yeah, because that is kind of how it feels a bit. Yep. And it's, I mean, so to me, I mean, I saw that question. That's one that I picked because I legitimately had questions about that too. How you would feel about seeing, yes, like on a catwalk or just in imagery that's supposed to be empowering to women.
Yeah, like a woman's march, for example.
That's where I saw it, and I felt slightly confused.
Yeah. That's because you're using your brain.
So I saw it and I was just like, but then, okay, to be really honest, I saw it and I'm like, shit, I don't think that this is right. But is there something wrong with me for not thinking, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because they've raised you that way. They've trained you to bite your tongue before you criticize Islam or anything to do with Islam.
That's what they want. Like, that's where this whole bullshit Islamophobia thing comes from is,
yes, that's perfect segue.
Avoiding criticism of it so that you don't challenge it, so that you don't question it, so that it's allowed to continue to live.
Which is the way that Muslims are raised. That's what Islamists want. That's the Salafi way. That's what I was telling you guys about. I'm not allowed to question things. It was it was punished. You're not supposed to criticize. You're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to question. You just do. And for some reason, free human beings in the Western world are accepting this. Like I didn't have a choice. I was brainwashed from a kid. But like, why are grown adults accepting this like Salman Rushdie said, like the West has internalized the fatwa. Like it's like Muslims are, it's like there's these bullies and they're like, say I'm beautiful, you know, like, or I'm going to fucking kill you, you know? And then everybody's like, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. Like, what are you doing? You guys.
Like that chick on Instagram who just does nothing but post selfies all day and then gets mad if you don't say, again, topic of another podcast.
The dead Robin story? I don't know. So my way of thinking though, like when I saw that and felt sort of like that little bit of shit, I shouldn't feel critical of this big sign that somebody's holding up, that
because you don't want to be racist.
Well,
and I think that's what this is something I've been like thinking in my head for like the last month. It's like this weird combination of, you have like far left liberals wanting to like distance themselves from just the stupid bullshit the far right is saying, just because it's something that the far right's saying. So we can't say anything that sounds like it. So in this case, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they're going to criticize Islam. They're going to say we should do something as fucking stupid as ban Muslim or Muslim majority countries from being able to come in. Like, you're only helping. We only have 4 hours of live streaming here, but I think that's what it is. And then we have like people on the far left saying, well, no, you can't say that. You should let them be their own. Like, you should let this woman dress how she wants to dress. That's fine, but she's not dressing how she wants to dress. The religion is telling her how to dress. She's being it's controlling her and telling her how to dress. That's not a choice. It's or even if it is a choice, you have who was it? I forget the woman's name that was in I think it was even in Saudi Arabia, who posted a picture of herself on Twitter without her hijab on, and she got arrested, or they're at least, and then they're talking about like lashing her for it.
Yep. Yep. And same thing happens in Iran. Women are literally going to prison and risking their lives to take off the hijab. And then we've got women over here celebrating the hijab. It's a weird, like I was watching this TED talk with this woman who left the Westboro Baptist Church, and she was talking about like coming out of the darkness and then into the light, and, you know, joining the world and realizing that they're not all hateful people, and totally, completely, you know, related to that, because that was a lot of my story too. Except the difference is when I came out into the light and I joined the world, I'm like, oh, look at all you dumb fuckers celebrating the darkness. Like it was a betrayal, but it's also like, how are you so stupid? Like I almost died trying to get out of that. And women in Saudi Arabia and women in Iran and women in Somalia and women all over the world are dying to get out of this. And how rude. Like, it's just like shoving it in their face. I don't know how to explain it. It's I get so emotionally charged because it's such a betrayal, because these are I am a liberal. Like, you people, like I can't understand how you're supporting oppressors. And I think a lot of it has go ahead.
Oh, a lot of it, I think you're about to say what I was about to say. A lot of it just has to do with people that just are ignorant of their religion, and so they're defending this religion that has instructions in the Hadith to kill us, and we don't know that or these people who are defending it don't know that, or maybe they do, and they just say, well, you're just interpreting it wrong. It's like, no, it says that.
Yeah, and I think it's also what you said before too, of it's just like a knee-jerk reaction to the right. So if the right are being racist, so we're going to be like uber super duper loving of all cultures, regardless of, or all belief systems or whatever, regardless of what that belief system actually is. And then this is when you, like, there's a couple of things here. First of all, I don't think that a lot of Muslims vote Democrat, right? Like Linda Sarsour, who, like, I love Sharia, Linda Sarsour. She is not a liberal human being. She is clearly a right-wing conservative Muslim. But Bernie Sanders, you know, props her up in his tweet, and he's talking about how he supports her and he's calling her a progressive. Like, no, she's not progressive, Bernie. She wants to vote Dem because she knows that you're going to pander to minorities. If she were in a country, like if she were back home, she's going to vote for the Islamist group, for the Islamist party. That's who she is at her core. But when you want to, so what I mean to say is liberal and Democrats are not the same thing. And so Democrats they conflate that, right? So they're like, okay, so the Republicans only like white Christian men. So therefore, we're going to like everybody else, and everybody else, come, let me take care of you. Let me love you. And they are not even thinking about if you're aligning values with these people, but it's like, no, it's just you have dark skin, or you have a different sounding name, or whatever. So here, come, let me protect you. Well, are you going to do the same thing with like black supremacists? They're black, you know, like, but so even though your values don't align, are you also going to support them?
Let's be honest. Black people are scary.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like,
that was a joke. Please don't send me. Please don't send me. Tweet at Insinual.
Yeah.
Everything's my fault because I'm a woman. So
that was a joke.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's a joke.
And ISIS are a minority group, and they have brown skin. Are you going to support them too? Like, where do you draw? If you're just going to support people because of their identity and not because of their values, you're going to get yourself in a fucking mess.
But it's just a complete, like, just ignoring of any sort of nuance to that, to think like for more than 5 seconds about what I want to support or why I'm supporting this person. It's like you said, it's just this person is not white, so I'm going to immediately defend them no matter what the situation is, because they've probably dealt with a lot of shit before, and I mean, a lot of not white people have, unless you're Ben Carson and you think they came here willingly. But
that's another podcast too.
Another podcast.
But really though, like the thing is, then you're protecting and defending all these people, whatever. But then what's that doing for a woman in a house with like paper over the windows?
Exactly. So what about the minorities within the minority, right? So like, this is the thing, like I am all for supporting human beings. I'm a humanist. Like it's not like I'm saying kill all Muslims. I'm not, you know what I mean?
I'm going to edit this out and you're just going to say kill all Muslims.
Right? NSA is just going to pick up that one line. Like, of course I'm for that, but what my problem is that the celebrating of the right wing conservative Muslims is the confusion here, like you mentioned. Exactly. It's super like, what are you doing? And then when you support the right wing conservative Muslims, what you're doing is all the other Muslims are now second place, or according to SPLC, they're actually anti-Muslim, because that's what you've created that though, right? You're supporting the conservatives. So obviously the liberal-minded, secular-minded, moderate Muslims are now ignored. We're going to celebrate the women that wear hijab. We're not going to celebrate the women that don't wear hijab. Even if they're Muslim too, it doesn't matter. You're not authentic enough or whatever.
They don't have a big target on them to let you know, hey, you should support me necessarily. They're just another brown person. So they're not special. And like you said, they're not unique. They're not something that we can hang our hat on, like what you said, Clinton, obviously was trying to do to show I'm accepting of other cultures without question.
And I mean, you can do that. You can accept other cultures. Like you can say,
right,
but you don't have to accept you don't have to celebrate the far right wing part of that group.
And I think part of it is people just don't know that it is like an extremist group. Like obviously ISIS is, but like you said, like the wearing of the hijab, like they don't know that that's not, part of, or it's not part of Islam. It's not in the Quran anywhere.
And I think you're absolutely right, because why is this discussion even happening about, is the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group? Like, how low is the bar for Muslims that ISIS are the only ones that we consider extremists, right? Like, Muslim Brotherhood are horrific people, but we're like, they're not throwing gay people off of roofs, so maybe they're not so bad. You know what I mean? Like, they're worse than the KKK.
They're just dropping them. They're not throwing. So it's gravity's fault at that point.
Yeah. Like it's just a really, really low bar.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people even know that that's something that actually happens. Like gay people do get thrown off of roofs.
Yeah. Because that's what the religion teaches. That's Sharia.
Yeah.
See, and I'm always amazed, like when Dan on his Facebook page posts anything about Islam, you get like of comments, messages, all kind like, and I mean, obviously Yasmine, you run your own social media too, and I'm sure get your share of comments and feedback about like what you're doing. It's amazing to see, just as an outsider, like the internet kind of explode over some of these memes or articles or whatever around religion.
I think that part of the reason why I got into this world was because I recognized that when Dan or Sam Harris or anybody else, like a white man, says exactly this.
I want to stop you. I'm glad you chose to include Sam in this conversation too. I know we're on the same level.
Yeah.
he's He's gonna like just listen to his name and Sam together.
I know Sam regularly tunes in.
Yeah, you're gonna go out for coffee later, have a beer. But like when a white man posts something, then people sort of they take it as their opportunity to virtue signal. They don't even have to think about what he has posted. They're just like, white man is saying something. Mm-hmm. So I kind of realized, like, as a brown woman, like I can say these things, and they have to think about what I've said. They can't stop by saying, who are you to say that? You know what I mean? Like they can't just look at my identity, because it doesn't work. So then they have to go to the next step, and they have to actually look at the meme and respond to what it actually says. So they have to actually use their brain when they're interacting with me. And I can see that with a lot of people that I know on social media that don't have the identity that gives them that sort of not protection, but like ability to speak out more than without being attacked. Like people, I mean, they do attack. First, I would get a lot of like, what do you know, white girl? And I'd be like, actually, I'm Arab. And then they're like, oh, fuck, blocked.
Actually?
And then they block, right? Or they'd be like, what do you know about Islam? And I'll be like, well, I was Muslim for 25 years. Ah, shit, right? They have nothing else to say. So then they have to actually engage with me or run away. Most of the time they run away. But I was looking at the posts that you were posting. They were hilarious, Dan. They were perfect. They were spot on. I loved them all. And I loved all of your responses even more. And I think that even though people have that knee-jerk sort of virtue signaling reaction, because like you were saying, Natalie, it's the way we were raised with political correctness, right? Like this is what you're going to get that icky feeling before you criticize something. Or so people have to get past that, though, right? Like they have to, I think the more that you post these and the more that you respond, and all of your followers were jumping on them too, right? Like you've got some great followers that were just not letting go. So
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to think I may have had a small part of that, but like I'm just happy that there's a
conversation.
I'm able to put out that, like, I have a platform that I can have that kind of conversation on and get people talking and talking to one another, not just whoever, like me, like as like the person running the page, but as like just people talking to people. And then like the thread I sent you yesterday with I couldn't even read.
It was about
most of the
oh right, yeah, the responses.
And she's, like I said, like that woman had been messaging the page for like 2 weeks at least solid. It was just the same, it's the religion of peace. It's like, no, you can call it that, but then we have to like find a new word for like the colloquial word for peace, because it's absolutely not.
Yeah. And I don't expect that you'll ever get through to her because she's brainwashed. But the fact that she's on there making arguments and other people are reading your responses and the responses of your followers, that will help to make them, because like you were saying, they need to think for 5 seconds. Just stay with this thought for like just not even a full minute and you'll get it, right? But people just react.
That's one of the things that I at least try to convey is there's so many people that just read things and don't comment or don't engage just because of either, they just don't want to deal with pushback, or they don't want other people, like somebody else, to actually see like what they think and attack them. And so like you can't measure that. You can't measure the impact on that, but there's so many who, like, even I'm just going through my messages because I've started saving, like you can assign labels like to messages to pages. So I've just started saving these messages from either current Muslims or former Muslims who like are appreciating what's going on and like reasserting like the things that I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I feel it's a responsibility that we have. I grew up Catholic until I was like 13. So, I mean, I have, and I wasn't even molested. So I have like nothing I wasn't cute enough. Maybe I didn't like, hey, I was even an altar boy. And like, I had a lot of one-on-one. He had a lot of opportunities, is all I'm saying.
Oh my God.
Or maybe he did, and I'm just repressing it. Who knows?
Oh.
I wasn't. Positive experience.
So yeah, so there we go. There's another podcast too.
There's another podcast. But like, there are people who, like you said, even though we live in, we live in North America, like we're not, we don't have YouTube blocked, so we don't have all these different websites blocked. We have the ability to speak like that. There's so many who don't, or so many who can't, or so many who just because of pressure from their family aren't able to do that. Like I feel a responsibility to get that message out there, to say those things that they can't say, to draw Muhammad because we're told not to, and to do the things that other people can't but want to do for whatever reason.
100%.
Agrees with that is an asshole and like fight me.
Yeah. And
like, don't fight me because I'm not a fighter. Like, so you're like, no, like.
But no, but you're having all these like comment sections conversations for the people who are the bystanders and people who are looking and though like those are the people that just in general, like those are the people you have the conversations for. You're not going to convince the people who are so indoctrinated beyond all like hope of critical thinking. Get the ones who are like maybe on the verge and they read this stuff that you write, Dan, that you write, Yasmine, and like then it starts to come together. And that mean that's why I think any of us do what we do in terms of like advocating for our various causes.
And sometimes we do, like we don't know, like we could just be like making little chips in the cement wall that they've got up in their head, right? Alish Bazarmeen, who is Ali Rizvi's wife, Ali told us the story of how she was communicating with a Muslim and she was telling him that he was stupid and he ended up blocking her because he was like, or she blocked him or something. And then like 3 years later, he bumped into Ali and he's like, can you just tell your wife that she's the reason why I'm an atheist today? Like it took that long though, right? Like he hated her. He was mad at her. They're blocking each other. But it got through. It was, she just a little chink in the armor, right?
Yeah. That's what you're doing. I mean, that's why like we're so stoked to have you on to talk and to share all this with our audience. And like, it's the kind of thing where, we want to leave all these little like artifacts around on the internet for people to find that might be questioning these things. And
I love it. Yeah.
And who knows, like if somebody listens to this or then follows your page and, continues to follow what Dan does. And it's like helping change one person's mind who then can maybe change another person's mind. And it's like paying the critical thinking forward, hopefully.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Doing what we can. So I know anyone who watched this or listened to this is going to want to follow you on all the social media places. So can you tell everybody where to find you online?
All right. I've got a website, confessionsofanexmuslim.com. And it's got a few chapters, like excerpts of chapters of my book. And it's also got all of the different things that I've done. Like I'll put this podcast up there eventually, the different conferences that I'll be speaking at and interviews and articles and whatnot. And you can also follow me on Twitter at ConfessionsExMu, EXMU, and on Facebook, Confessions of an Ex-Muslim as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us. And I feel like we'll probably invite you back sometime because there's like probably a million other conversations.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I could chat with you guys for another 4 hours. This is so fun.
Seriously. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thanks, guys.
That was so good.
Yay!
That was so good. That was awesome.
That was really great. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. I'm so happy you had me on. And I loved your pay the critical thinking forward. That was just beautiful. Like I
don't know where that came from.
God. It was from God.
It was from God. It was from God. All of this is just blessed by
He does
the
work
Lord.
in mysterious ways.
He does.
I'm writing that down.
Sometimes
That's
he
going to
pops
be
into
the
my brain.
That's going to be the quote that I use when I share this. Pay the critical thinking part, because that's exactly it. I mean, once you get out, I mean, you could just go ahead and just be free, or you can turn around and try to help others.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, Dan. Do we need to have her wait?
I need
while
to
you
stop the
recording?
Zencaster. I need to stop the
Yeah.
YouTube. Thank you for watching. I think we have most people we've ever had watching on YouTube. So that's awesome.
People
Thank
were
you guys.
interested in this, and yeah, and I had a couple of friends message as we were talking saying this was really good. So
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I have
So
no idea what the numbers are on Facebook, because it said the peak live viewers we had was 5 on Facebook, which I know cannot
My
be
heart.
accurate, because I know the reach on the posts is 30,000 right now. So I know that's not true.
Yeah.
So it's already out.
So
It was live. Like, I can share this.
Yeah, the video. Yeah, the video is live on the podcast page. I shared it on my link to it on my page as well. So, and then I tagged all your stuff. I got your Twitter, your website, and then your Facebook page on it. Was that
Awesome.
everything?
That's perfect. That's everything. Exactly. Yeah. I have too much like personal stuff on my Facebook. So I don't want to just invite people. Like, I'll invite you guys.
Right.
Like, I'll add you guys as friends, but I won't.
People who.
Yeah. You just never know.
Murder you.
No, you never know.
I mean, my daughter's dad is an Al-Qaeda agent, and I don't know if he's alive or dead. So, like, I have to take some precautions.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great night.
All right.
I'm going to share now as
Thank
much
you.
as I can. That was awesome.
Cool.
Talk to you
All right.
soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Night, Dan. Bye.